Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with Market Whenever. Oh, start calling that Market Whenever because it's tough for me to get it out on schedule a lot of times. But for Market Money this week, I'm going to talk about a very, very important topic, probably the most important topic in MTG Finance, and that is Pro Tours. Pro Tours are getting a change here. We're going to go back to Modern, so it's going to get a lot of opportunity for quick modern spikes and quick modern sells like we used to have before the Modern Pro Tours were discontinued. Now, I used to really focus on those. You can go back to some old Market Mondays or even just the Rogue Markets when I told you to check very closely to Modern Pro Tours. And then when they got rid of them, I also was very critical, saying that, okay, well then Modern is never going to have these huge price increases like we've seen in the past. However, the SCG Tour did cause a lot of price spikes. Lately, we've seen cards like Meddling Mage that have gone through the roof. We've seen some other cards that were down to near bulk or low or had flatlined out for years and years, only having commander casual pressure, and then they get put in a deck and they spike up to really high prices. So with MTG Finance, that's what you want to do. You want to get in low and sell high. I mean, that's the name of finance, the name of the game. And timing is everything. The opportunity for that is everything. One of the things that I do like with, it was a saying by Corbin Hostler, I believe, that leave the last 25% to someone else. Because, yes, a card price can spike up even more than when it initially does after the huge price spike. But usually it's more volatile, and it's more likely it's going to go down than up, and it's harder to sell at the peak than it is to sell at the initial price spike. So anyway, that's just a philosophy of mine. Again, I like to always speculate before, whenever they announce like a set, if anything in the set is remotely feasible with another card that is existed, like for example the pirates, the dinosaurs, the vampires, then if you can get in before the cards are spoiled or right as they're spoiled, buy into them and then sell them either into the hype or right after the cards people start buying them for the decks, that is always the best opportunity. And a lot of times you will kick yourself, man, if I would have waited. I knew did that with Shaku Endbringer, where I think I bought in at like 50 cents, sold for like $6, and they went up all the way to like 9 or 10. I don't know, I'll have to check the price on that. And I was like, oh, if I would have just waited. But I'm happy. The 50 cents to $6 was a great increase, a great return on my money, and that's kind of where the philosophy is. So I'm going to tie that all together in this week's episode of the Market Monday. And let's talk Pro Tour, because there's a very unique Pro Tour going on, schedule going on this time, because they're going back to Modern. And this is going to be the last relevant standard before rotation. What I say relevant is we always have about a year window. 6 months is more reasonable, but for rotation, before the cards that are rotating start going down, I'll show you that with like Gideon. There are cards that continue to see play after the 1 year mark. Like Gideon, of course, is going to be the perfect example. We'll look back at some other cards, maybe like Ishkana and some other ones that still saw heavy play, but continued to go down in value even though they were still seeing a ton of play in Standard. And after that 1 year Pro Tour, that second to last Pro Tour is when you want to definitely sell off all of your cards in the upcoming rotation. So the 2018's Pro Tour schedule is as follows. There is going to be the Pro Tour coming up this weekend, which is going to be Standard. So it's going to be the last Standard one that is relevant, because the next one, where I usually like to sell off all the cards in February, is going to be Modern. It's Pro Tour Rivals of Ixalan, and this is going to be not very relevant to Standard. So I think that this weekend is the time that you're going to get out all of the expensive Kaladesh, all the expensive Aether Revolt, Amonkhet, and Hour of Devastation. Sell them off. You'll thank me later, even if they do spike up a little bit more or have a few trends here and there throughout the morph of the Standard. If Standard even changes, that's a big if, from here till next September rotation. So again, the next one will be Modern, so it's not going to get any pressure. And then the next one is going to be June, which only leaves July, August, and September for prices to possibly increase. But I'm telling you, they're not going to, because it's a mad race for vendors to just get rid of their Standard stock before rotation. Now, again, we'll show some examples of this coming up. So what does this have for opportunity? We can get in you can speculate before this weekend. You can definitely do so. The best way is just to kind of check pros streams, check. It's pretty easy, actually. No one's very secretive of what they're going to run. So far, I don't think there's going to be a breakout deck at this Pro Tour. I think everything that I was complaining about at rotation is come to fruition. There just isn't a lot of cards from the new cards that are really impacting. Everything that has come out of the Ixalan is more of a support card. Yes, they have created some archetypes. I would say like the in Blue Enchantment, the search for Azcanta has made an own little archetype to a point. I mean, it did exist before, but it definitely does give those kind of decks the card draw engine that they need. And again, there's a few cards here and there. The Hostage Taker. It just feels to me like mainly a support set. Vraska's Contempt allowed black to have the black-blue control to have a little bit of an edge over the red-blue control. And then there's other cards like Deathgorge Scavenger that helped against graveyards, a few other stuff like that, but nothing has really impacted standard. So that gives you a very good opportunity to actually invest in hypothetical cards after rotation that will be the new kind of staples, because we're going to have these sets that are very impactful, especially Kaladesh, very, very impactful, are rotating out. And that will leave these other sets. It's going to have kind of a power reset when those rotate out. And this is about the time, not quite, but sometimes you can get into the low here. But usually it will be the next set after the draft is so it's going to be around, yeah, it's going to be around February, March, probably March, when you really want to get into Ixalan, all the cards that bottom out. If the trend continues where the energy decks and the Ramen Up Red and the Authority of the Cons, or the I Win button deck. What is that deck? The Approach to the Second Sun decks will continue to exist and push out all of these Ixalan cards and bottom them, really, really bottom them out. So that's one of the topics today I'm going to talk about. Is kind of cards I'm watching from Ixalan that I think are powerful enough to be format defining cards once rotation occurs. And then we're also going to talk about maybe some opportunity from the Pro Tour, maybe some undervalued cards, and definitely talk about the cards that you should be 100% getting out of after this weekend. I like to personally sell on day 2 of the Pro Tour. Day 1, a lot of time there's a lot of hype decks, especially the ones that get on the feature match early on, people buy into, or a card that just performs phenomenally well on a feature match or a deck tech. A lot of times those decks don't even have to be good. They just have to be showing them. So if like Conley Woods gets focused with his Marionette Master deck, or if someone else has like a innovative strategy, those cards can really, really spike up, and you definitely want to sell out of them at the end of day 1 or day 2 because they're unproven, and then by the time day 2 comes around, at the end of day 2, you have a bigger, clearer picture of what is the dominant force. So something to be in dominant on day 1, again, featured in the feature match because they want to kind of sell you this illusion of diversity in the format. They're going to try to feature decks that aren't just your typical Ramen Up and your typical they know they're going to see a ton of those on day number 2 and 3. So they try to get these more creative decks in on day number 1. So anyway, we're going to look at all of that topic. I'm going to show you kind of my strategies. I've made a ton of money in the past with some very key specs leading up to the Pro Tours and sold them off. There's been some crazy spikes in the history of Magic with just surrounding the Pro Tours. And that's why I'm happy there's going to be a modern one again, because it seems like the Star City Opens, Worlds, other big tournaments in Modern just never had that effect that a Pro Tour Modern had with these insane price spikes because a deck does well. So anyway, let's just get to it with the Pro Tour. So this is what I like to talk about with rotation. Here is Tezzeret the Schemer. This was an unproven card that came out the gates pretty expensive because anytime there's a blue draw spell or just a blue planeswalker, they come out pretty powerful. And everyone remembers how powerful the last Tezzeret was. And I guess this one doesn't even really draw you anything. It just kind of ramps up, plus it has a little control element. But of course, a 4-drop planeswalker with 5 loyalty, very, very interesting. Has a way to at least progress your board state by creating a treasure, the equivalent of a treasure, or protecting itself immediately. Those are type of the cards that a lot of times you look for in a planeswalker, something that impacts the board immediately. So this started off the gate. It didn't find home, didn't find home, didn't find home. They really thought that the Improvise was going to be more powerful with the Aether Revolt. Ended up being kind of a dud when compared to either Vehicles or Energy or Delirium that was still existing at the time. And so Tezzeret saw little to no play, and same thing with the, if you go back, same thing, it doesn't see a lot of play in like either vintage or modern or anything like that. So it fell. It's also kind of an awkward card to be playing in Commander. So it fell to its bottom, and then it spiked up in Ixalan because of treasures, and it just made this card a lot more interesting because of its synergy with treasures. You're adding a lot of treasures. That means its -2 abilities can be a lot better. You're creating treasures, which have a lot of things that kind of deal with that. And then it spiked back up. So this is still pure speculation that this card will see play. Tezzeret, I think, is a hold, though, because we still have another set that deals with treasures. Well, most likely, the next set will still have a big treasure theme to it. And so I like Tezzeret and Marionette Masters to hold, or if they do bottom out a little bit lower, this could be a buy-in, because what I like about Tezzeret, it is a mythic from a second set that is just lost right now. What I mean by that is none of a lot of times competitive players will buy playsets of cards they think they'll be playing with, and this is just not one of them. And so these are mainly a lot of just in stores have a ton of these just lying around in their their discount bin. I'm pretty sure if you are a savvy buyer, you can find Tezzeret for extremely low. I bet buy lists are going to be low. Yep. Card Kingdom at 380, Channel Fire at 4. This is well below 50%. A lot of times Card Kingdom itself is very aggressive on cards. Speaking of which, look at this madness. Which Card Kingdom, they were buying this anyway a couple days ago for like, oh yeah, geez, $5. Card Kingdom, the spread on what they're selling and buying a card like the Cyclonic Rift is $1.50 is the spread. That is something that has a lot of high demand. Like I said in my past videos, this is my go-to card. This is where I'm sinking all of my money, and I'm going to be selling it before Commander 2018 comes out. So I've been buying it at about $3 a piece. Really started hitting it here, and I have still found a lot of $3 to $4. I've been able to buy them on Cardsphere, and I will be selling them pretty shortly here, come like March or April. As it's just too volatile in box sets to be printed. It's just such a staple in the Commander format, and it has a little bit of modern pressure in Bluetron. But anyway, you can see that spreads are usually a little bit better on cards that are in high demand. This one, it's pretty average, not so much. So Tezzeret's one of those I'm keeping my eye closely on. For this Pro Tour, it could be a breakout card. Same thing with my card Marionette Master. But nevertheless, I think it's still safe to sell everything that doesn't have a lot of impact, that doesn't deal with dinosaurs, doesn't have like anything that could get better from this set. You're going to be selling regardless of how well it does at the Pro Tour on day number 2. So the cards I really like to see, if we just go over here to price lists, and let's go to format. Total format prices will have a lot of the ones that are seeing a lot of play. The Scarab God, you definitely, if you have any Scarab Gods left, this is the time to sell. It's going to be very, very tough for a Mythic to go above this price tag. And do you know what's also a topic I need to talk about is the Standard Showdown packs. Those are being released at a very, very high rate. They're giving these out like crazy for these tournaments that happen at your local game store. And usually these are heavy on the mythics and heavy on the foils, and there will be a lot of older cards in these. I think it's pretty much you'll have the same amount of split from everything that is in standard at the moment. I really wish they do this for modern, just print a modern specific set for the showdown packs to try to cultivate like a modern type format. But that's wishful thinking. The Scarab God, though, $46. What do you want this to accomplish? Is this going to be a card that could go up higher than 46? I highly doubt it. It is extremely rare that cards in standard go above the $40 price tag, let alone the $45 price tag. And I think that this card, it sees absolutely no play in the modern. Yeah, no play in modern, just too weak, too vulnerable to cards like Path to Exile and whatnot in the modern type format. And so therefore, I think that it is definitely a sell. So, Scarab God, get out after. Yeah, I think it's going to have a very huge impact on the modern tournament or the Pro Tour. So it might spike up a little bit more, and but 45, this is definitely get out card. The next one, of course, is going to be Chandra. Chandra does see some play in older formats, even all the way to vintage. But this is Kaladesh. Kaladesh is extremely open. It was open like the masterpieces out of Kaladesh were very, very sought after. So these boxes were cracked like crazy. It also had a good EV compared to other release sets. It held its EV for quite some time, its estimated value. You can see that if you compare it to other sets, this has been a pretty good one. Out the gates, it was worth a ton. And then even a lot of times they go under, these big sets definitely go under the $200 mark. And like Shadows of Innistrad or Battle for Zendikar, go check those out. And those crashed, where this one has been a very, very good EV set, mainly because it did have the lands, but it's also had some very premier mythics that have held their price for quite some time, and some other just good cards here and there, like the Panharmonicons, and a lot of these other cards that have had some EDH relevance. Cards like Authority Console, Fumigate have been staple cards in the format for quite some time. So anyway, what I'm trying to say about that is Chandra has there's a ton of supply out there for Chandra Torch of Defiance. Once it is out of the standard, it is going to half in price. And I think that it's at its near high right now. And right now is a perfect time to get out of Chandra. I use 4 of these in a deck, and I'm going to, that I like to play. I also use 2 in Scred. I also have a couple in some EDH decks. I'm going to get rid of all of them over this weekend, as then I can just recoup them within a couple of months. A good example of this, like I said, would be Gideon Ally of Zendikar, which also does have modern pressure. And you can see that even though it still saw a lot of play after this little bump here, in fact, right here to here, it saw the most play. Like to Amonkhet, this was still Mardu Vehicles was really dominating this format. Boomed right here, and it still had that collapse. So you can see the price tag is very, very similar to Chandra here. It spiked up after rotation, after it became definitely solidified as the big man on campus here. Everything had to answer Gideon. Everything was playing a lot of Gideons, and then it just continued to have its little free fall, a couple spikes here and there after some good Pro Tour finishes. And it even when it was still relevant in the Hour of Devastation, it was all the way down to half its value. So Chandra, I think, is going to go kind of a very similar route as that, and then it is going to go way, 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 way down. I'm keeping an eye on Gideon because it does see a lot of modern play, at least as one ofs in the all Gideon tribal deck. It got a lot better with the Planeswalker change. So again, this is a card though that you should have got out of. At least you could have waited for this Pro Tour, and you still would have been okay if it spiked up here. But definitely by the second, or this one's actually a little bit later, though. You got to think of this Ixalan Pro Tour, because usually these Pro Tours come right a couple weeks after, but they had Worlds. They had this interruption with World. So I think that this Ixalan Pro Tour is very similar to like the second set Pro Tour of the past. So anyway, just keep that in mind with Chandra. It's Scarab God and Chandra. Scarab God at least has a little more stability here because it is a second set mythic that wasn't open very heavily, and it still does have a lot of EDH pressure and whatnot. Another card, of course, is Hazoret the Fervent. Hazoret the Fervent is a first set, so of course that's why it hasn't been able to reach the price of the Scarab God. It has solidified itself and now in Mardu Vehicles. That's why you've seen like another price spike here, as Mardu Vehicles is really, really starting to show up in the 5-0 finishes, and they're all using Hazoret as their 4-drop slot, which I think is very, very smart. They've kind of mimicked the Ramming Up Red. So one of the cards out of this, is actually going to be a spec card of mine. I really do like Heart of Khorne moving forward. I think that we're looking for this card in day one. It could do very, very well, and this could have a quick double up. I think that Heart of Khorne is really, really low at the moment with how powerful it is. And the Abrade and Fatal Push are keeping this in check. However, a lot of decks have been moving away from Fatal Push, as it doesn't do anything against the Abzan tokens, doesn't do anything against Approach the Suns, it doesn't do anything against Teamer Energy. I mean, it can take care of like Long Test Conservant, but at that point you've spent your turn trying to deal with that, and then they progress with the Rogue Fighter, then with Bursting Hydra, then with something bigger. And Fatal Push a lot of times ends up being a weak card versus a lot of the metagame of the current standard. So I like this as a quick spec for the Pro Tour. Is it risky? Yeah, but I think the Heart of Khorne is going to have one more day in the sun before rotation. I think it's going to have maybe not quite a double up, but I'm thinking that $12, $13, $14 is reasonable for a card that's going to be a 4 of in most decks. Hardekrans could also get a ton better with the next set being printed if they print a Planeswalker that really likes to crew Hardekrans. So keep that in mind. I love this as a spec. That's like the one card from rotation that I think is good going forward to sink some money into. You never know when this card might be good enough for Modern. Yes, Path to Exile is a thing, but it does survive a Lightning Bolt. It does apply a lot of pressure, having the Flying Vigilance. It's very surprising that we haven't seen this in like a Jund type strategy with Liliana being able to crew this. So you can basically use Liliana, make people discard, and then crew Hardekrans to protect Liliana. And it's just a matter of time before I think that this will start showing up in people messing around with it in Modern. But that's just my theory. So anyway, Hardekrans is probably the one card that I'm definitely keeping my eye out. I have been speccing into it slightly. Skyship Sovereign is one of those cards as well, but it's from Kaladesh, and it seems like the Skyship Sovereign has only been maybe a 1 of and 2 of, and it's also been outclassed recently because the 3 damage does not deal with a lot of the cards that people have moved into, like the Bristling Hydras, and if it takes care of a Glorybringer or a Servant, and kind of whoop-de-doo. It used to be a really good card for kind of the other decks out there, but now it's kind of a subpar answer. It's getting outclassed by Glorybringer, Scarab God, all those type of cards. Dies to a Braid, dies to all of the artifact hate that people are starting to bring in. Start to see even like Slice and Twain and the Deliverance card out of Amonkhet that have been coming back. So yeah. Anyway, so let's go back to just the price list here of other cards from Standard. You can see, though, that all of these cards are going to be rotating. Torrential Gearhulks, I think, is a sell. Getting the Trials is mainly Modern that has bumped this up. I think this is still a sell. Is Modern really applying this much pressure to it? I mean, it did show up in White-Blue Control, but recently it's out again. And it's out, what, a 1 of? Yeah, most approach decks have been cutting the Gideon again. And then they've been just opting for putting in yeah, just more of the spells, and I agree with them. I think Gideon's kind of a wasted card. It's okay as a 1 of. It's good versus some decks because it's hard for them to deal with the Gideon that's out, but with the format being very, very heavy on like Glorybringers and things like that, I just don't think it's a good a card to be putting in that. Speaking of which, though, the decks it is good in is, of course, the Modern decks. It did the Tribal Gideon deck. It is seeing like usually a 2 of, though, and to me, though, that's not enough pressure. Especially from a first set for the Gideon. So I think Gideon is a sell. The Ballista is interesting because Ballista might just be one of those cards that will continue to go up in value because you can see the insane pressure that this card has from non-standard. In fact, standard is just a very, very small number of decks. These Winding Constrictor Sultai decks or these Esper Gift decks are the only ones that are really using this, and then it's seen play in Vintage, Modern, in Eldrazi Tron, even Tron. You find it every now and again in other Modern decks, and it is just a insanely played card. Gets better and better with every commander printed. There are so many decks that I'm like, oh, Joaquin Bliss is great with this because it's got the +1/+1. It's an artifact. It's anything that dumps a lot of mana into a deck wants it. And excuse me, my mic just keeps on falling. Let me adjust. I hope that didn't kill your ears. Anyway, that Joaquin Bliss is, I think, though, is going to get halved after rotation. But you can see the pressure still going up. It might just be kind of the collective brutality. It seems to me, though, that it has more, Standard does have more of a demand for this card. And so once it rotates out of Standard, it's got to go down. But I don't think it's quite a sell quite yet. I think this is a sell like 4 months out of rotation. All right, let's go down to the Nicol Bolas. Oh, this is about as sell as a sell gets. It's never really hit its stride. Unless something really, really, really big comes out of the next set that pushes Grixis. Nicol Bolas is just it's terrible in the format right now with a lot of hard counters for it. 7 mana has been a lot tougher for what people expect. I mean, this is Torrential Gearhulk in this slot, Approach to the Second Sons, better finishers than Nicol Bolas. I built a Nicol Bolas deck, a Grixis control deck, and a lot of times Nicol Bolas would just be dead the turn you played it. It wouldn't really do anything. All of these abilities were not really relevant for what you wanted to be doing at the time. Ronus is an interesting card because this could be a card that has an impact from from, like, the thing is, like, if there could be a Teamer Energy that ran a lot of Ronuses, there could be like another deck that just threw this in its flex spot, and maybe this shows. Usually in Teamer Energy, Ronus is a card that impacts the board a lot. The problem is Vraska's Contempt is already seeing a ton of play and cast outs because of Hazoret, and Ronus, I think, has been pushed to the side. There's just been, but even in Teamer Energy, a lot of times Hazoret is a better slot here than the Ronus. Ronus does get a lot more interesting with the spoiled card, the dinosaur that's 12 green, because this is a 3-drop that actually reads the board. It's going to reduce the cost of that card by 5, so now you're down to a 9-drop for a 12/12. But if you have any of the other creatures out, like a Bristling Hydra that's been pumped up, it's reducing it by 10, so you can get a 12/12 out for 4 mana. And then people have also been the new spoiler card, comparing it to the Regular Alpha. Could we see an energy deck that starts running that sort of strategy? You could actually put in the what's the 3/2 that you can spend energy that gets a 4/3 trample. After you can second main phase. You have Ronus out and that's 9. That's 9 mana. You now have a 5-drop for a 12/12. That's pretty decent. So keep your eye on Ronus. Ronus is one of those I wouldn't mind either holding or selling at this point, but you really need to make your decision after the next set comes out, whether or not Ronus is going to be a card that sticks around. All of the lands, I think, are going to be sells pretty soon here. I think they're going to still continue to go up until rotation. They are seeing, especially like Spirebuff Canal, they are seeing modern play, but I'm telling you that this card is like an uncommon for most sets because of how many, I swear, I mean, of course this is anecdotal, that these show up more in the standard showdown packs than anything, these lands. Same thing with like Fetid Pools. It doesn't see a lot of play outside of standard. There's a few decks every now and again that will run it from modern. People are talking about how these are kind of nice little cards to fetch up because, you know, if you want them into play tapped anyway. So if you run a one-of option in a lot of modern decks and you're like, oh, I don't need a land to come into play untapped this turn, I can just go grab my cycling land. Yeah, that's definitely a good option. Liliana's weird. It just hasn't seen a home. I think it's a sell. The Locust God, of course, is just EDH that's been pressurizing it. Paradox Engine EDH. Disallow will be a sell at the end of this Pro Tour, I believe. I think it's just too much. It's just too much. $6.61, even though it sees a ton of play in EDH. That's too high for my blood. I don't know. Either way, I'm okay with it. Verdurous Gearhulk is the other one that you should definitely keep your eye on because, again, if the Winding Constrictor decks come back, there is some sort of... It does seem like this set, the Ixalan, did have a slight 1/1 counter. You saw it in the Merfolk strategies. You also saw it in the Explore strategies. And so if something actually comes out to actually help with the +1/+1 counters, this could be a card that goes up a ton. So Verdurous Gearhulk is another card that I personally am keeping my eye on, not selling, kind of pumping a little more money into them. Hardacran and Verdurous Gearhulk so far. Glorybringer, I do think, is a sell because of the how many of these are out there. It was the game day promo. I think that 650, we saw Tyrus Tracker hit about this, and then it kind of petered out and then went down to 3. So it's under kind of the same the same thing. Fumigates, Authority Consoles, you're going to be wanting getting out of those as quickly as possible after this Pro Tour, as I think that they'll just continue to go down rather than up because of anticipation for rotation. All right, so that's kind of my spiel of cards that exist right now. So let's talk about the second subject now that I'm approaching onto 28 minutes. I know that these Market Mondays are always going to be long, rambly videos. That's going to be kind of the format with it, and I keep saying I'm going to get the Rogue Market out. I'm going to get the Rogue Market out. I'm going to get it out. Last week I went I went down to spend some time with some relatives. My mom actually just got out of the hospital, so I've been helping her out with her physical rehabilitation. So yeah, excuses. That's just why I haven't got the Rogue Market out. I want that to be a more highly edited, scripted type video. So I hope you don't mind these really long, rambly videos. I hope they actually are helpful with kind of my mindset of how I invest in cards. Anyway, let's go on to cards that I am really keeping my eye on for Ixalan, and it could impact this Pro Tour. I really don't think that anything is going to happen at this Pro Tour, metagame-wise. You can see that Teamer Energy is now up to 26%. If you add all the other energy decks into this list, we have a lot of money, like a lot of percentage. We're up to over 30%. So what is this? This is 33% with the Soul Tie. If you get some of these other ones up, there's another 2%. So we're up to 35, another 3.5. we're probably up to 40% of the decks being energy decks. And then the next ones are going to be Marty Vehicles. And I'd actually put like Marty Vehicles, Black Red Aggro, and Ramming Up kind of in the same slot because they're all using very similar cards like the Beaumont Courier. Black Red Aggro does run Scrap Heap, I believe as well. Yeah, of all these are going to be another 20% of the metagame. And so now we're up to 60% of the metagame being 2 decks, and then you have the control decks, whether they're going through blue-white control or Abzan tokens, kind of the remainder. And then every now and again, I think that a lot of these decks will be more like 4-color energy didn't make this cut. There's a lot of 4-color energy decks out there. Yeah, there's just not a lot of diversity in deck choices at the moment. These seem to be the metagame, the rock, paper, scissors. The thing about all these decks is that all of them can beat each other. It's just, we're in kind of a format where it's just good stuff. But the thing is, I think the clear winner has come out. The Teamer Energy, if you across the board against mirror-ish decks, against Ramming Up decks, against Marty Vehicles, against the blue-white control, Teamer Energy has the most bang for its buck. A lot of times the pros like to run these type of decks as they are just safe. They are a deck is going to be good, and if you can win the draft pods. If you can rely on your drafting skills, if you can rely on your just outplaying your opponent, then Teamer Energy is a very, very solid deck to run. We saw that with Huey at Worlds. We saw that with a number of other people at Worlds. Ramming Up Red's very similar. It's going to be a deck that can beat everything, and they're going to be very, very comfortable playing it. And I think that a lot of people are going to be running this white-blue control to kind of prey on these two at the Pro Tour. And so it might actually leave room for another deck, a deck that beats sometimes the meta game we like to call is, do you play the number 1 deck? Do you play the deck that beats the number 1 deck? Or do you play the deck that beats the deck that beats the number 1 deck? Because, everyone might shift to the deck that beats the number 1 deck, and the number 1 deck actually won't have that many players playing it. We saw that with Marty Vehicles in one of the Pro Tours, that just no one showed up with it. And then these people, what we call next leveling, the people that built the deck that beats the deck that beats the number 1 deck, did very, very well, like the blue-white controls at the time, or blue-white flash at the time. A few Pro Tours back. But anyway, now I'm getting really rambly on other things here. So what I'm trying to say is, though, I don't think this Pro Tour is really going to affect the metagame too much. And it's the problem with it too, is like I stated before, is a lot of these cards are from sets that are going to be rotating in less than a year. And so there's not a lot of time to invest in them and sell them. So it's just one of those things that is going to, I think this is definitely a selling Pro Tour, not a buying in anticipation Pro Tour. You can see from Teamer Energy, there's 1 card from the new set. Everything else is basically Kaladesh or Amonkhet, which actually there's not a lot of Amonkhets here. You can even look in the spells here, nothing. So besides Rootbound Crag and Carnage Tyrant, there is literally nothing. There are a few Death Gorger Scavenger, that's it in the sideboard with the energy strategy. If we go over here to the Ramming Up Red, you're going to find everything is from Amonkhet. We have Hazaret, we have the Oncrop Crashers, the Earthshaker Kenras, we have these Soulscar Mages, then we have some other Kaladesh cards. Do you see something, a trend here happening? There is very little things from Ixalan. The next set, though, could push some tribal sets into the mix, which I don't think will happen, though, because I just think that the Ramming Up Red, the aggro strategy from Red, and the energy strategy from Teamer Energy from Kaladesh, and the control strategy from Amonkhet are just too solidified. There's not a lot of cards that are going to be able to impact these type of decks. So anyway, that leads me on to keeping my eye out for cards that are going to be bottoming out here shortly with the draft coming to an end from Ixalan. Yes, we'll get some more pressure from Rivals of Ixalan, but you should be definitely keeping your eye on these in anticipation for rotation. The first one I want to talk about is Captain Lunary Storm. I think this is going to be kind of your go-to aggro card once a lot of the ones rotate from the Amonkhet. Do we have a good aggro strategy for Red? Yes. I think whenever Lightning Strike is in the format, I think that Red is still going to be pretty aggressive. We still do have the Dinosaur, the can't gain life. So we have the 3 damage direct damage spell. We have the something that punishes your opponent for playing creatures and gaining life. And we have a very aggressive card in Captain Lunary Storm. I think that this is definitely a archetype that's going to stick around, and this is going to be the go-to card that hits the slot. It also does still work with treasures. We're getting more treasures coming out, and for those reasons, I'm definitely keeping my eye on Captain Lunary Storm. At $1, I think that you can definitely get these in for even cheaper because, yeah, you can see that Channel Fireball is selling them for 60 cents, so right there, and the buy lists are down to 10, 26, 30. So you should target these about a quarter. I think you'd be very surprised that you can get these cards at less than a quarter, and if you stockpile these, yes, it is a first set, so it might end up being kind of the same thing that happened to Pia Nalar. I invested quite heavily in Pia Nalar, and it just never went up, and so, but this one is going a lot more under the radar than Pia Nalar, and I think that if you've played against Captain Lunary Storm, this card actually can get out of control very quickly, and the more treasures that are created, the more this can get out of control. It actually pairs quite well with Marionette Master, another card that I've been looking at, as it gives you a sack outlet for those treasures that then the Marionette Master can come in as a 4/6 and have a bunch of treasures, sack them all to the Captain Lunary Storm. I know they can sack themselves, but this can actually dish off that even more damage, and it actually creates one for the Marionette Master on that turn. So I like Captain Lunary Storm. Another card I've been keeping my eye out on is the Vance's Blasting Cannons. Right now, it is a little bit tough for it to flip. You have to cast 3 spells in a turn. Which Opt is in the format if we get a few other cards that work on the lines of like Opt, or even in the red type spells. Vance's Blasting Cannon, even if it doesn't flip, is a pretty good card. This is Outpost Siege. So each turn, it's going to give you card advantage. I think we're going to start seeing it show up in sideboards of red decks. If we get like a Jund midrange or a black-red midrange or something like that, I think this is going to be a key card. Once Chandra is out of the format, this is going to be an even more key card. Because right now, I think Chandra is playing the role that Vance's Blasting Cannons is playing. Once Chandra's gone, it's going to fill that. There's going to be a void, and this is going to be the card that people are going to chuck in. It is legendary. Keep that in mind, but a lot of times people... I think that this is a lot higher of a payoff if it sticks and flips. And if it sticks and flips, you can still cast your Vance's Blasting Cannon and be fine, as it's a flipped Spitfire Bastion. And they work very well together at that. So again, this is something you can buy in at probably way low. No one's even buying this. Card Kingdom is buying it for 10 cents. Channel Fireball is buying it for 10 cents. Again, 25 cents I think is very reasonable. This card could spike up a lot post-rotation if it does see a deck. I've always been interested in Entrancing Melody. Right now we have Confiscation Coup. Once that rotates out, I think that if there's another Void for a gain control type card, Scarab God also will be rotating out. This is going to be those Mirror Breaker cards of gain control. I actually like this card a lot, as it is sorcery speed, but this is very similar to Threads of Disloyalty in Modern. And if you have to take like a 1-drop or a 2-drop, and in the format there's a lot of very, very good cards in that slot that you can just take on your turn 2 or turn 3. It just scales really well every turn. You should be able to take your if you're on the play, take your opponent's biggest threat. Maybe it's a turn behind on that, but it's still very, very powerful for that. If there is a token-based strategy like Registar Alpha, you can always just take for 2 mana their 3/3 token. That's always an option. And I think the power level is there with this card. Again, it is a card that is not even being purchased. You can find these in bulk bins, and it's just better safe than sorry, I think, to pick this card up before it could be that sideboard slot that just like look like Heroic Intervention, for example, just spiked way up. The power level is there. The other one I like is Dreamcaller Siren. Dreamcaller Siren, I think, just needs more pirates. We're almost there with the pirate strategy. If you've played against the budget pirate deck, it's actually a pretty good deck. So it's a tempo-based deck. They try to establish a bunch of early pirates, and then they can put out... There's a couple ways to do it. They can either put out things to crew. They'll get better, but the favorable wins, a lot of them have been playing because a lot of the pirates do have flying, and this is a flash flying that can tap down up to 2 target non-land permanents, so it feels very similar to Elder Deep Fiend, and I just think it needs the right shell. Right now, unfortunately, the strategy of choice for the standard is kind of what we call kind of go wide value. So Temur Energy, Abzan tokens, even ramming up red, tries to spread the board really, really wide. And a card like Dreamcaller Siren is just not good at tapping down specific cards. Factor in the fact that Bristling Hydra has pseudo hexproof. Like vehicles are going to be crowed in response. Dreamcaller Siren just doesn't fit in the metagame at the moment. The power level is definitely there for 3/3 flash flying tap 2 cards. So I like Dreamcaller Siren. Again, you can see the buy list. No one's buying it. This could be a breakout card with more pirates. Another card that I like is Sword Point Diplomacy. I think the Sword Point Diplomacy is good because I think that after ramming up red, after that rotates, we're going to be... Black-red aggro looks to me to be the aggressive We are losing a lot of aggressive black cards, one being the Scrappy Scrounger, but I think that Wizards has been moving forward in black having an aggressive feel to it. And sometimes black isn't. Like if you go back to the Khans of Tarkir, Dragons, and Fate, it was definitely more of a defensive, it just didn't have the aggressive feel to it. The last Kaladesh forward, though, black has had some very aggressive cards. Swordpoint Diplomacy is perfect as if you pressure your opponent enough and you reveal the top 3 cards of your library, either you're drawing at least 1 card and then having your opponent lose 6 life, but this can easily do up to 9 life if there's just bad options for your opponent. And if they give you, even 2 of the cards, is it better than a Read for Bones to have your opponent take the best card and then pay 3 life and still give you 2 cards? How about like this is the point? A lot of times in a deck, if all of your cards are good, if all of them, if you have a deck that can utilize the lands, if you have a bunch of burn spells, then no matter what your opponent gives you, it's going to be useful, and you're going to go through your deck. So I like Swordpoint Diplomacy. I think the power level is there as well, and you can see it is bottomed out. You can find these in bulk bins. Another one, of course, like talked about, I'm keeping my eye on is Regisaur Alpha. The problem with this is EDH is really, really keeping this price up. Casual is really keeping this price up. It is seeing very little play, if any at all. And you can see the buy lists are way low. We said Tezzeret had like a spread of 50%. This has a spread of a fifth of the value of where they're buying it. Even Card Kingdom is way low for the buy list of it. And you can find Channel Fireballs blowing these out at 350. This price should definitely go down pretty soon. The spoiler might cause this to have a little bit of a spike because the new card that, of course, the what is it, a 14 drop that reduces the casting cost of this by the power of the creatures you have, the total power of creatures you have. Of course, the Regisaur Alpha is going to reduce it by 7 and also give it haste. So 12/12 with haste that gets reduced to 7 to be a 5-drop, curves perfectly with the Regisaur Alpha. Might cause casual players to play this again, but I'm keeping my eye on this because I really like this card post-rotation. This is the perfect card for the Jund or the Teamer or the Naya. Naya might be a color combination post-rotation that will be relevant again, because right now this is being outclassed by both the Scarab God, Chandra, and the Glorybringer. So even Hazoret in that slot. All of those cards are just better. They impact the board more than Regisaur Alpha. However, this is a card that power level is there. It creates a 3/3, so it gets that immediate value that also swings in for 5. It's just not Glorybringer. Glorybringer really is the problem with Regisaur Alpha, because A, it counters Regisaur Alpha. It attacks and kills Regisaur Alpha. So your 5-drop attacks and exerts, kills the Regisaur Alpha. They have a 3/3 left. Sure, you have a 4/4 dragon that's going to do it all over again in a turn. Second of all, it just does better what Regisaur Alpha is trying to do. Regisaur Alpha creates a 3/3, attacks in, trades with a Rogue Refiner that already drew a card and added 2 energy, dies to a Bristling Hydra, dies to a Longtusk Cub, so it doesn't really do anything there. And so look at the counterpart. Glorybringer comes in, exerts, kills a creature, doesn't trade with a Rogue Refiner or something, and can then go directly to phase 2 like a Chandra or some other Planeswalker that's out. So for that reasons, I'm not a fan of Regisaur Alpha at the moment, but post-rotation, this is going to be a powerhouse of a card. So I'm keeping my eye on it. I want it to bottom out, and this is a good card to sink some money in my opinion. The Kinjali Sunwing is another card that I'm keeping my eye on because I think the power level is there. A lot of times in the formats, having your opponent's creatures come into the battlefield tapped is key. I'm surprised this isn't well, it's just because the white decks are already good versus we have Authority of the Consoles and stuff versus Raminap. But again, the power level is here for Kinjali Sunwing. If there is some sort of tempo-based strategy in white, who cares if it's even a dinosaur, this card will have a very similar role that the Thalia had at one point. I'm actually surprised that I think that the problem with this being in Mardu at the moment is if the power and toughness were swapped, it'd be really, really good because it could crew the Heart of Cran. Right now it can't. So anyway, the last one I'm keeping my eye on is the Awakening Sun's Avatar. I think it's a pretty powerful card in the right ramp shell, and if there's other ways to reduce maybe the cost of dinosaurs in the next set, this could be a good powerhouse card. There was a good deck out there, a green-white control deck that really utilized this card with Hour of Promise, but it's just being outclassed by the other kind of late-game control decks that can just finish the game with casting Authority of the Consoles twice. But I think the power levels here is definitely, it's there for the Awakening Sun's Avatar, and you never know what could be printed that will make this card better and better and better. And for $2 Mythic, again, the buy list price is very, it's actually, the spread's not too bad with this. There are vendors that are buying it for about 50% of its value. So anyway, those are what I'm keeping my eye on. Predictions for the Pro Tour, I think it's just going to be same old. I think Ramming Up Red is actually the one that's positioned the greatest because they're starting to have a very good sideboard strategy versus their bad decks. You have the dinosaur that prevents life gains, so that it at least has a way to counteract the authority of the consoles. You have the Harsh Mentor, which is just really going crazy. This could be your breakout card. Keep your eye on Harsh Mentor. This is starting to see a ton of play. It was talked about in an article on TCG Player that it just is probably the best card against the Teamer Energy for ramming up. And a lot of them are starting to put these in the main board. We can look at a lot of the ramming up red decks. Yeah, they're still in the sideboard. Look at this one. Four of them in the sideboard. And they come in versus... They're pretty decent. They're not very good versus the mirror, I'd say. They can get some life in for the Beaumont Courier. Get some life in for... does the Eternalize actually trigger this off? I think it does. And then get some either Pier or Hazaret. But it doesn't affect anything else, right? It's just activated artifact, creature, or land. Yeah, so I guess it does. It does work for the ramming up ruins as well in the mirror. So it's probably not a good enough card in the mirror. But many of the other decks, it does have a lot of... especially the Teamer Energy, it has a lot of punch for what it does. Like, you can't activate your Bristling Hydra without taking 2 damage. You can't activate your Long Tusk Cub. You can't even activate what was the other card in that deck you couldn't activate? There's a lot of them. You get Scarab God. If you try to activate it, it's at least 2 damage. There's a lot of things. It does die to a lot of the removal spells like Abrades and the Harness Lightnings, but again, that's just a... they've used it for the Harsh Mentor. It's going to leave the rest of these kind of open to do their job. So I like ramming up. I think it's going to be the deck to beat at the Pro Tour again, which is, business as usual, boring. But whatever. Yeah. So there's my Market Monday for the week. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it wasn't too rambly. We're really going late on this episode. It's been Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com. Thanks for watching.